Welcome everybody. I'd like to welcome our two panelists today who've kindly joined us for this next half hour. First of all, I'll turn to Professor Gunter Saunders. Welcome, Gunter. Gunter is the Associate Director of Digital Engagement and Library Services at the University of Westminster. And Gunter, you've worked in higher education for over 30 years. Gunter's also a teacher and a researcher in microbial genetics, and is very highly active in developing approaches for the integration of technology into teaching. Gunter is also a Principal Fellow of the HEA and has been recognised for his contributions to the support and development of learning and teaching, including classroom design. Welcome, Gunter.
Thank you, Mike.
And also hello to our other panellists here. Welcome, Professor Kay Yeoman. Kay is the Academic Director of Learning and Teaching Enhancement at the University of East Anglia. And Kay's leadership has been pivotal in embedding institution-wide lecture capture and e-marking systems using the Blackboard VLA integration. She's also established training for staff in the design and delivery of online learning. And in response to the challenges of the COVID-19 crisis, a new online course for new and returning students that has enabled them to prepare for their increased level of remote digital activity. And Kay has also established a network of digital champions across the university. Welcome both, great to have you here today. Let's just kick off by just getting you both to paint us a little brief picture. So how would you sum up the current situation in relation to digital teaching during this rather horrendous COVID crisis? Gunter, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, Mike. Well, I'd love to say it's going really, really well, and I think for some people it probably is in some subject areas, in certain contexts. Everything's really working out much better than perhaps people thought it would when it all first started. I mean, just to step back from how well it's going for a minute and look at context, we've had to move a large number of staff across the sector from a situation where they're teaching primarily face-to-face and trying to exploit technology to support that face-to-face, and at the same time try to edge ever more into meaningful blended learning. We've had to move from that to what I call, and I think others call it, a kind of form of emergency distance learning. And that's tremendously difficult for them, never mind the students. So perhaps one shouldn't expect it to be fantastic for everybody, but I'd say overall what I hear from staff, from students, it's confirmed by pulse surveys that we've done at my institution. I'd say people generally would say it's okay. You know, we're doing a good job. I think academic staff are doing a fantastic job to grapple with something that's inevitably very difficult for them. A totally different way of delivering, having to come to grips with technology tools for learning that before were not essential to them, but are essential now. So I think they've done a great job. I think the students are generally very appreciative. So okay is how I would, reasonably sum it up. Of course, there are some people who may not be getting the best experience, and I think that's inevitable, and I think everybody's working terribly hard as well to identify where that's happening and to try to remedy that as best they can.
Super, thanks Gunter for painting that picture of what it's like at Westminster. Kay, are we hearing similar things over at the UEA, or?
Yes, I think that very much resonates with our experience. We are a university which is a campus-based university. We built a lot of our reputation on a lot of face-to-face contact with our students, and we have had and still do fantastic pockets of online learning practice across the whole institution. I think it was about that rapid transition which we had to do last in March, when we had to just put everything online immediately, and that was the experience of all. And some staff were very well prepared for that, and some staff were not so prepared for that. So there was a lot of quick upskilling which we had to do across the institution. And we were very ably supported in that by our Centre for Technology Enhanced Learning, and also Blackboard as well, because we've had a good working relationship with Blackboard for a long number of years. I think what the students would forgive us right at the start, I think that we needed to have a more planned and considered approach when we started the 2021 academic year. So we had a lot of effort put into ensuring that we did have quality provision online for our students, and we're not fully online. We are still having some face-to-face teaching with our students as well, so we are very much still operating a blended model. Obviously that'll change from next week when our students start going home, and we will be back to fully online. I think that our students have given us some very good feedback. Our staff are getting rapidly to grips with the technology, and things have improved. I think where we are now is a little bit of online fatigue, and I think that that is very much from both the staff and the student perspective. So I'd say our first 7 weeks went actually way better than perhaps we would have anticipated, really high levels of engagement. But now we are seeing a little bit of a dip where we are kind of entering the back end of the semester, where we are all really tired. And I think it's about how we re-energize, how we get through to the end of this, and then also re-energize again for the second semester.
While I've got you there, Kay, let's just think about your teaching staff in particular, and think about the kind of support that they've had to be given during this transition stage. And not only what have you done, but more especially what do you think should be done to better support your teaching staff when they're transitioning to something which is largely an online delivery mode? What's your feeling on that?
Yes, we, as I said right at the start, we did have some really good pockets of good practice, online delivery, blended, fully online courses, Future Learn, we've done MOOCs as well. So we do have the skills within the institution. It was really just ensuring that those skills were then able to transfer across the whole institution. So this is where our initiative of our digital champions came into place. So initially I designed a fully online course for our staff to take, which they did over the summer. We had well over 90% compliance with that, with staff taking our very bespoke course. And then we had 150 digital champions who we've worked with over a number of years, so we knew who they were. And I think that that was a major part of our success, is that we were able to rapidly identify those individuals who we knew would be able to help their colleagues. And we embedded them across the institution, and not actually only in the academic side, but also in the professional support services as well, because I think that's an area that sometimes gets a little bit left behind in terms of the skilling, because those support staff have a lot to do with the administrative side of teaching, which enables online delivery to work really smoothly. So our digital champions were from the faculty professional services, and they were also academic staff, and we embedded them in all of the faculties. And so there was a lot of one-to-one, there was a lot of development work that went on. We discussed issues, we had digital sandpits, but most of all, those 150 digital champions went through the 3 Blackboard courses which Blackboard offer, which is the fundamentals of digital design and learning, and then designing for digital learning, and then the excellence in digital learning and teaching. And so we had our digital champions go through those courses in order to then be able to help their colleagues. And we ensured that we had digital champions which were quite discipline specific, because we know that some of those technical issues that we knew that students would face would be different in arts and humanities as opposed to faculty of medicine and health, for example. So it was high level course, digital champions, and then that personal touch which those digital champions could do with their colleagues within their schools and faculties.
Anything you do differently going forward? Have you established if there are any gaps in terms of that support? Anything that you would heaven forbid if we had another one of these crises again?
I think the gaps would perhaps be around our digital platforms. So Blackboard has been, and Blackboard Collaborate has been our main tool of use, but we would probably diversify a little bit to kind of allow some more engagement work to happen with our students online. I think one of the things that we have noticed quite a bit, especially over the last 2 to 3 weeks, that our students are being a little bit more reluctant to do group work than they were at the start online. So I think that a further addition to our systems architecture would be quite valuable in trying to help with some of that group work as we go forward. So I wouldn't do anything differently as opposed to the training programs that we put into place, and we fully intend to keep on our digital champions through the rest of this academic year and into the following academic year. But I think we would perhaps diversify a little bit with the portfolio of tools.
Thanks, Kay. And just over to Gunter. I mean, Kay's presented to us a sort of a tiered approach. Is that something that's similar approach to you at Westminster, or and if so, is it? And also, are there any differences?
Similar. I guess there are always going to be variations in the way that you provide support to your staff. I mean, I don't think we have, for example, such an extensive network of digital champions. One difference for us, if one thinks for a moment about the professional services staff, is that at the time, or actually just before, a year before COVID hit, we had a very well developed digital capability program for professional services. So when COVID struck, our professional services teams were extraordinarily well prepared for the use of products such as Teams, well, primarily Teams actually. So they had in some respects of what they do, what they get involved in, they were very well prepared by that. I think for academic staff, we similarly had a kind of core set of courses. We did make use of Blackboard support and Blackboard courses, but that was primarily for training the trainers. For our colleges and schools within them, we ran customized, and we had about, most of the schools did buy into this. We had a customized course that was focused on planning and implementing online learning. And we emphasised there the I'd say two core things: the need for design, if you can find the time for design before diving into this, and alongside that, striking the balance between asynchronous and synchronous learning. So those were two important elements of our overall approach. We've also put in place a network of what are called graduate digital learning assistants, and they started a little bit late in the crisis, when it didn't start until August, September time, but they've started now to have an impact and are working at local college level and providing support to complement the support being provided by the central services. So I think what we've done is similar. We've tried as best we can to upskill our staff. So a great raft of training courses that are about how the tools work and how you can go into a Collaborate session and manage it. But at the same time, alongside that, we've developed customized versions of a course about planning delivery and how to make it effective. And that customization has been supported at local school level by what I wouldn't describe as a digital champion necessarily, but certainly learning and teaching champions.
Great, thank you both. You painted a good picture of some of the similarities and differences between your two institutions. I'd just like to move us on to another topic. I think there is an assumption that for many that the leap to the fully online or almost fully online mode has been not such a great thing. I'd like to try and flip that on its head and try and get some feedback from you. And do you find any evidence that your teaching staff have got any greater efficiencies? They've managed to save time, and have they taken to the digital mode more effectively than perhaps you first anticipated? Gunter, well, I've got you. What do you think of that?
Well, time has always been an issue for those of us keen to see digital integrated into teaching. Previously, people have never had the time to perhaps develop blended learning in the way they would like, because it does take a lot of time to develop those things and integrate them properly. And you probably have to take something out of your face-to-face course in order to make it kind of work. Certainly at the moment, I hear much more that it takes more time. Now, the precise reasons for that, I can really only speculate. I would feel that probably a lot of that is to do with the lack of time that staff have had to actually think about redesigning their modules, their modules for online delivery. So inevitably, a lot of it is trying to fit what you did face to face online, which is the same as designing a course, as we all know, from the ground up to be delivered online or delivered part online. So overall, I would say generally people feel it is taking more time. There are exceptions, there are always exceptions, and it does vary. All of these things vary, as Mike, you know, and Kay, you'll know, across subject area. So I do know some examples where people have used discussion boards, for example, to save time in terms of providing key information to students, not having to respond to so many emails. That's examples of that happening before COVID, and I think there are more examples of that now, just a small example. Perhaps a slightly bigger example, I know of some in particular subject areas who have actually done what I would call a very fast redesign job using very basic approaches. And they are saying that they've saved time by basically shifting much more over to an asynchronous mode of delivery and using the live sessions sparingly for high quality engagements with students around things that the students have to have engaged with before they come to those live sessions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you're describing very much a sort of a flipped classroom type approach there, and maximizing the benefits of those synchronous elements. What's your view, Kay? I mean, are these points that Gunter has made, do they resonate with you? Or have you got any insights into some fantastic practices and people who've seized hold of the new mode and taken it to the next level?
I think we certainly haven't seen any saving of time yet. I suspect that once we have considered what we perhaps want to keep for next academic year and beyond, then I think that we might see some savings of time there. But I think in order to develop good quality online learning, the design has got to be right. So it's not just a case of being able to replicate exactly what you were doing face to face and just hope that that would work online. We had to put in significant effort into making sure that the student work, you had good levels of asynchronous activity and synchronous activity, that there was that opportunity for discussion to happen for students, especially our first year students who were finding it very challenging to bond as a cohort, to get that group work going with our students as well. We also have that added necessity of making sure that what we do is accessible. So our staff for the first time were having to edit transcripts, and we know that that can take a considerable amount of time in order to make sure that transcription is accurate. And so that was an added layer onto the workload that staff are reporting to us. We tried to encourage our staff to chunk bits of material, so thinking about what they would have delivered in a 50-minute lecture and getting them to think about how they would break that down into 10 minutes chunks which would deliver specific learning outcomes. And as you say, very much to use those synchronous sessions that we would have with the students to do more workshop type experiences, so that they would be able to get to put into practice some of those theoretical concepts which they were being taught. And we, for those subjects where we had laboratory requirements and other professional body requirements as well, those were still taking place face to face, but in a very much socially distanced manner. So we were still operating a model which was very much intended to be blended learning. I think perhaps where some staff have found it difficult was where they gave the students some pre-reading to do, perhaps some videos to watch, but they were still then running a full 50-minute collaborate session perhaps, and then some post explorative work as well. So what perhaps would have been a 50-minute lecture for the students was actually turning into something which was far more substantial than that. So I think it's quite interesting that our students have come back and said, there's a lot more here than we were anticipating. So that is something that we need to look at, because of course, being online, there is that temptation of posting a paper, posting other links to other resources, and to overdo it, and then the students are feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So I think it's about having that good design right at the start, and we're learning all the time, and it's one of those things that I think that next academic year our experience will be, and we've got a lived experience, and from both the staff and the student perspective, that that it's next year that I think we will see most of our gains.
Let's hope so. Thank you both. And just from my own personal experience on this, I mean, what I found fascinating is the balance between the asynchronous and the synchronous, and getting that right. And I think what Gunter said earlier as well really resonates with me. How we use those synchronous sessions, I think, is starting to shift away from much more of the didactic delivery type mode, and much more into the, if you like, the flipped classroom model. Both, I've just got a couple of questions, or a few questions actually, coming on the chat. So just while I've got those, and we've got a few minutes left, let's just tackle a couple of these. You've both talked a lot about obviously the asynchronous components of your course, but yes, synchronous this applies to as well. You've got a lot of potentially a body of students at both universities with different kinds of learning disabilities. This question from Astrid: what kind of initiatives are you taking to meet the needs of those students within these socially distanced times? Either of you like to tackle that one first?
For us, what we have for our students is Blackboard Ally. So that means that our material that we post onto the VLE gives you an accessibility score, and it gives you advice as to how to make your material more accessible to the students, so students can download things in alternative formats, for example. And also our commitment to our students for good quality, accurate transcription is something that we are investing quite heavily in at the moment. And that would be to do around the website accessibility. We have analytics in place. We have a QR code system of attendance, so that we can make sure that our students are engaging with their digital learning, both synchronously and asynchronously. So we can run reports to ensure that we have a safety net for our students. And that goes across the whole piece, because what we see as so we have a very active inclusivity policy, and here at the university, and what we see as being good for those students who have those protected characteristics is good for all students. So we very much kind of adhere to those accessibility standards across the piece.
Yeah, it's become a real challenge, and it's been very highly exposed in the media. There's been some very high profile cases with students with different sorts of disabilities, trying to make sure that they can engage with their learning experiences, and particularly challenging online. Do you need to add anything further to that, Gunter?
Again, similar. I mean, we work very closely with our disability services to try to support any students, or and also the inclusivity agenda helps here. But there are also going to be specific cases that come forward, and we've adapted in a variety of ways. So whereas previously, for example, a student might have somebody with them inside of a physical classroom helping to take notes, etc., we've got people doing that similar job inside of live classrooms as well. So we have, I would think most universities will have that full range of support mechanisms that work together to try and ensure that there's a level of playing field as possible for everybody. But of course, the way in which you deliver that might be very different now because of the higher amount of particularly live online teaching that is happening. We also, as Kay mentioned, and I think maybe I should have made it clear earlier, I've talked about our online delivery a lot, and that in many respects has been a big focus, obviously, but we also do have face-to-face classes happening in a socially distanced way on campus, and they present similar problems, similar technical challenges, because some of the participants of those are remote. So there again, we are very careful, or try to be as careful as we can to be ensure that we support everybody.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind. We've only got a couple of minutes left, well, 3 minutes left. One question that's just coming from Deborah, which is one that I've sort of asked myself, I'm sure. It says this: it sounds like we're all reinventing the wheel. I presume Deborah's talking about all of your academic staff doing their own individual practices, building online courses and so on. Do you think the future will bring a much more collaborative approach to digital delivery? Shared courses, for example. I don't know what you think about that view and opinion.
Shared courses between universities, or just within universities?
I'm not sure, but yes, I would imagine, rather than individuals working their private silos, we all join together. And if we're teaching biology at UEA, we also can use the same content over at Westminster, etc., I assume.
I think that would be a really interesting outcome from this. And I think that what we need to be able to do is to have some forums through perhaps some subject-specific societies, and I know that some of those still run through Advanced HE, so people can get together and really think about this issue, about expertise and where it lies within different disciplines across universities. I think that would be exciting, and I think that would be a really powerful outcome of our of the journey that we've had to make over the last 9 months.
Thanks, Kay. Gunter?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. It would be very nice, I think, to think that down the path, one of the positive outcomes of this would be more of a spirit of collaboration at an institutional level. I don't think one should underestimate the tremendous amount of cross collaboration that occurs between individuals and groups of individuals between universities already. That does go on, and it's tremendously valuable, but perhaps at institutional level, a lot more could happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I mean, I think we all know that there are various models out there where universities have collaborated in the past. I just wonder, I think of the example of Epigeum that came out of Imperial College, for example. I wonder if those kinds of models might well extend and increase in the future. Interesting time.